The alien palace stretched endlessly across the horizon, a towering blend of organic curves and shimmering metal that reflected the light of three suns. Its walls pulsed faintly with energy, a living structure that responded to its occupants, or so the palace's legend claimed. Inside, corridors twisted and turned in impossible angles, designed to confuse intruders and protect the queen who ruled this distant world. The queen, Valera, moved through the halls with her usual grace, her long, slender limbs gliding over the polished floors. Her eyes, large and deep blue, seemed to see everything, even the smallest details of the palace she had grown up in. Valera's mind was heavy that morning. Something felt off, though she could not name it. Her husband, King Thalor, had been unusually quiet, offering smiles that felt forced, gestures that seemed rehearsed. The usual warmth she expected in his presence had been replaced by a chilling formality. She shook her head slightly, dismissing her unease. Perhaps she was overthinking. Even queens could have bad days. As she turned a corner into a side corridor rarely used, she nearly collided with a human, a figure who moved differently than the alien guard she was accustomed to. His frame was smaller, less imposing than the towering alien warriors, but there was something in his stance that demanded attention. He wore the simple armor of a palace guard, but his eyes were sharp, moving constantly, assessing everything with a quiet intensity. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing slightly but keeping his voice low. There was urgency in his tone, a tremor of warning. "Forgive me for interrupting, but you should not go into your chamber." Valera's brow furrowed. "Do not go into my chamber?" "That is unusual advice. Explain yourself." The human leaned closer, lowering his voice further, so that even the walls of the corridor seemed unable to hear. "Your husband, he intends to harm you. He will attempt to kill you if you enter your private quarters today." For a moment, the queen froze. The words seemed impossible. King Thalor, the man she had ruled beside for decades, loyal, loving, or so she thought, was plotting her death? You are mistaken," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Surely you have misread some signs." "I wish it were so," the human replied, his dark eyes steady. "I have watched patterns, movements, and actions. I have seen preparation for something deadly. I have no proof beyond observation, but you must trust me. Do not go into your chamber." Valera studied him for a long moment. Humans were rare here. Most considered them fragile, limited in intellect and strength compared to the alien species of her world. Yet, there was something about this one, something that made her instincts stir. His warning felt real. "Very well," she said finally, her voice calm but resolute. "I will heed your advice, and for now. But I will need more than words. Show me your evidence." The human nodded, leading her silently down narrow, hidden corridors. He pointed out subtle signs she had overlooked: a hairline crack in the energy shielding of her chamber door, small traces of a chemical agent in the air vents, and unusual patterns of foot traffic among the palace staff. Each observation, though minor individually, painted a chilling picture when combined. Valera's heart raced. Her husband had grown powerful and secretive, yes, but she had never imagined he could betray her in such a calculated way. She looked at the human with a mixture of fear and admiration. "You see things others cannot," she said quietly. "You may be small, but your mind is sharp. Tell me everything you have noticed." He spoke steadily, outlining each anomaly, each irregular movement, each whisper and half-glance he had observed over the past days. Aliens who seemed loyal had been communicating with unknown parties, bringing materials into the palace under the guise of maintenance and positioning weapons in places supposedly secure. It was a web of deceit, and it pointed directly to Thalor. Valera clenched her fists. Her mind raced through palace schematics, daily routines, and known habits of her husband. If the human was correct, she had mere hours to act before walking into a trap she could not escape. Who else knows of this? she asked, her voice lower now, edged with concern. No one. The human replied firmly. Not even your closest advisors. The conspiracy is subtle and precise. If I had not been watching, you would not have had a warning. Valera nodded slowly, her eyes narrowing. Then we act carefully. You will stay with me, human. I will need your eyes where mine cannot reach. He inclined his head. Of course, Your Majesty. Together, they began a cautious exploration of the palace, checking corridors, vents, and security hubs. Valera realized that even her own memory of the palace's layout was insufficient. The human's fresh perspective revealed blind spots she had long ignored, places where a well-prepared assassin could hide or strike. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by whispered reports from the human as he identified further risks. Valera's mind never stopped. She had to protect herself without revealing her knowledge of the plot. If Thalor suspected she knew, he might accelerate his plans. Finally, the human spoke, his voice quieter than before. There is a pattern to his movements. He will act during the time of the evening feast. That is when he is least likely to be observed and most likely to exploit the trust of those around you. Valera's heart sank. The evening feast was imminent. Guests from across the galaxy would gather, including diplomats, advisors, and warriors. To move against Thalor there would be difficult. Every action would be scrutinized, and any misstep could be fatal. We must prepare a plan, she said, determination hardening her tone. We cannot confront him openly yet, or the entire palace will descend into chaos. We need leverage, evidence, a way to stop him without exposing ourselves prematurely. The human's eyes narrowed. I can help, but it will require precision. There is little room for error. Valera nodded. She understood that the human's approach was different from that of her usual guards or advisors. He did not rely solely on strength or tradition, but on logic, observation, and adaptability. For the first time, she felt the possibility that a human mind could solve problems that alien methods alone could not. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, shifting shadows across the palace, Valera retreated to a small, hidden observation room. From there, she could watch the main corridors, entrances, and her chamber without being seen. The human stationed himself beside her, eyes scanning constantly. Neither spoke, but the tension between them was palpable. Hours felt like days as they monitored the palace. Each servant, each guard, each advisor became a potential threat. Valera's confidence in her kingdom's safety waned, replaced by a simmering wariness. Yet, she also felt a spark of hope. The human had brought her a gift no alien could: awareness, clarity, and a perspective beyond the palace's tradition-bound rules. Finally, as the first lights of the evening feast began to glow in the main hall, the human whispered, "He is moving toward the hall now. You must be ready but cautious." Valera nodded, her hands gripping the edge of the observation platform. She took a deep breath, centering herself. The human's presence at her side was steadying, a reminder that even in the most alien and perilous situations, courage and intelligence could prevail. Tonight, she realized, the palace would see its first test of human ingenuity. And perhaps, just perhaps, she would survive the night not by her power alone, but by trusting a human whose instincts and intellect transcended worlds. The doors to her chamber remained closed. She did not move. She did not enter. She waited, observing, plotting, preparing, and for the first time in decades, Valera felt a new kind of strength, a partnership born of necessity, intellect, and the quiet bravery of a species she had underestimated for too long. The palace was silent save for the distant footsteps of her husband and the whispers of unseen conspirators. Shadows danced on the walls. Danger lurked, but Valera and the human guard were ready. They would not be caught off guard. Not tonight. Not ever. And so, in the heart of an alien empire, amidst deception, treachery, and whispered plots, a human's warning had given the queen a chance. One small chance to survive, to see the truth, and to prepare for the storm that was coming. The palace was alive with the subtle movements of its inhabitants, though most were unaware of the danger that threaded through its walls. Queen Valera remained in her hidden observation room, the human guard beside her scanning every doorway, every shadow. His presence, steady and alert, had become both a comfort and a necessity. Though she had ruled this world for decades, Valera now felt the fragile weight of her mortality pressing down upon her in a way she had never imagined. "You must understand," the human said quietly, his dark eyes reflecting a mixture of worry and determination. "This is not just about your chamber or your husband's immediate intentions. The threat is larger. There are others in the palace who have aligned with him, knowingly or unknowingly. Their loyalty is conditional." Valera's blue eyes narrowed. "I suspected whispers, but I did not realize the web was so extensive. How many? Who are they?" He shook his head. "I cannot say for certain. My observations only cover what I can see. But patterns suggest that the majority of the council may be compromised. Some advisors, members of your guard, even servants, who appear loyal, they could be involved." The queen exhaled slowly. "Then we must act carefully. One wrong move, and everything falls apart." She studied him for a moment. "You have been watching them for days. Tell me, what makes you so certain that my husband is behind this?" The human hesitated, choosing his words. "His behavior is inconsistent with his usual routines. He has requested access to areas he normally avoids, observed you at times he never did before, and directed staff to positions that serve no clear purpose. All these small, subtle actions suggest preparation for an attack. And yet, he acts as if nothing is wrong, which makes the danger more credible. People do not behave this way unless they are hiding something deadly." Valera's lips pressed together in thought. "I see. And you are certain this is not some misunderstanding?" "Your Majesty, humans are often blunt," he said. "We see patterns and we act on logic. The risk is real. You should trust me." The queen considered this. She had always trusted her instincts, and they now screamed in agreement with his words. The decision she made next would shape the survival of her reign, and perhaps her life. "We will need allies," she said finally. "I cannot act alone, but I cannot reveal my suspicions to anyone in the palace. Who can we trust?" The human scanned the room, his face calm but his mind working rapidly. "Trust must be earned through action. I can help you observe, assess, and protect yourself, but for others, we must be cautious. Perhaps there are those who will follow reason, not fear. We will find them." Valera nodded slowly. Her mind was already turning over possibilities, strategies, and contingencies. She realized that her authority alone could not guarantee her safety, not in the face of hidden treachery. She needed intelligence, foresight, and ingenuity. Qualities the human brought in abundance. As the evening feast approached, the palace halls grew crowded with guests. Alien dignitaries from distant worlds arrived, each displaying wealth, power, or influence. Valera observed them from her hidden vantage point, her gaze sharp. Every gesture, every expression, every small detail mattered. The human stood beside her, silent, scanning the corridors, entrances, and stairways. "They are gathering in the main hall," he whispered. "Your husband is among them, smiling, acting as if nothing is wrong. Watch him closely. He will not attempt anything here, yet. He waits for the right moment when vigilance slips." Valera followed his gaze. Thalor stood tall, radiating authority and charm. To the untrained eye, he was the perfect king, benevolent and dignified. But Valera now saw the subtle shifts, the slight twitch of a finger, a glance shared with a particular advisor. A whispered word carried on the wind of the hall. Danger lurked beneath his calm exterior. She turned to the human. "We need a plan. We cannot wait until he acts. We must be ready to counter him, but without revealing that we know." The human nodded. "We can create diversions, monitor suspicious movements, and use your authority to isolate potential threats. Timing is critical. If we act too early, the conspirators will change their approach. Too late, and it may be fatal. Valera's mind raced. She could manipulate the seating arrangements, subtly adjust the flow of the feast, and observe reactions. Her presence alone commanded attention, but she needed the human's insight to see what her eyes could not. Together, they would weave a delicate dance between survival and exposure. As the guests entered the grand hall, the queen moved gracefully among them, her poise and confidence concealing the storm of strategy in her mind. The human followed, blending into the shadows, watching, analyzing, noting details that might otherwise escape notice. The feast began, a display of alien culture and tradition. Elaborate dishes unfamiliar to human senses were served. Musicians played instruments that produced sounds beyond the range of ordinary hearing. Dignitaries conversed in languages that Valera understood only partially, yet her focus was never on the spectacle. Her attention was on the patterns, the anomalies, and the subtle indicators of impending betrayal. Hours passed, each moment heavy with tension. Valera noticed the slight stiffening of her husband's posture whenever certain advisors approached. The human pointed out minor inconsistencies, footsteps that paused too long in the corridors, glances that lingered too sharply. Each detail was a thread, and together they formed a tapestry of deceit. Finally, the human whispered, "He is preparing. The moment will come soon. Watch for the signal." Valera's heart quickened. She scanned the room, noting every hand movement, every shift in posture. Her instincts, sharpened by years of leadership, were now complemented by human insight. Together they formed a team neither had anticipated, a human mind attuned to observation, and a queen whose authority commanded attention. Then it happened. A sudden movement near one of the side doors caught Valera's eye. A guard, previously thought loyal, lingered too long, adjusting something hidden beneath his uniform. The human tensed. "Now," he whispered. Valera acted instinctively, raising her hand to redirect attention. The hall shifted subtly, sending a ripple of movement that caused the conspirators' plan to falter. The hidden device, a small energy disruptor meant to incapacitate her, misfired, sending sparks across the floor. Panic flitted through the room, but the queen's calm demeanor and quick thinking masked the danger. The conspirator froze, realizing the plan had failed. Valera's eyes met the humans, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. They had survived the first challenge, but the war was far from over. After the feast, Valera retreated with the human to her hidden observation room. "This was only the beginning," she said, her voice firm. "He will not stop, and neither will the others. We must continue to watch, to plan, and to act. I cannot rely on fear alone. I must rely on strategy, intelligence, and your insight." The human nodded. "I will remain with you, Your Majesty. We will adapt, observe, and prevent harm. But you must understand, the danger grows with each moment. He will attempt something again, and likely soon." Valera paced the room, her mind alive with possibilities. She considered each advisor, each guard, each servant, and imagined the scenarios that might unfold. She realized that her understanding of loyalty, trust, and power had been challenged in ways she had never expected. Humans, she thought, possessed an unpredictability that could change outcomes even in the most rigid systems. Night fell over the palace, casting deep shadows that twisted along the walls. Valera stood by a high window, looking down at the sprawling grounds below. Her people slept unaware of the danger within their walls. Her husband, her king, had betrayed her, or at least she now had reason to believe he might. And yet, in the quiet presence of the human guard, she felt a spark of hope. For the first time in years, Valera understood that survival was not only about power or strength. It was about observation, adaptability, and courage, the qualities that humans seemed to possess in abundance. The human beside her had saved her from immediate danger, but more importantly, he had shown her a way to see the unseen, to anticipate threats before they could strike. As the hours ticked by, they monitored the palace together. Each sound, each movement, Each whisper became a potential clue. The human taught her to notice the smallest details, the alignment of a uniform, the hesitation in a voice, the direction of a shadow. Valera absorbed each lesson, her respect for the human growing with each passing moment. Finally, as the first light of a new day began to filter through the palace towers, Valera allowed herself a moment to rest. She knew that the coming hours would be critical. The conspirators would regroup, new threats would emerge, and the delicate balance of power within the palace would continue to shift. But she also knew that she was no longer alone. With the human guard at her side, she had gained more than protection. She had gained insight, strategy, and the courage to act in ways she never had before. Together they had formed an alliance that transcended species, combining the best of alien authority and human ingenuity. And for Queen Valera, that alliance was the key to survival in a palace filled with betrayal, danger, and hidden plots. The coming days would test her in ways she could not yet imagine, but for the first time, she felt a measure of confidence. With the human beside her, she could face the storm and emerge stronger, ready to outthink, outmaneuver, and survive the 3. The grand hall of the palace gleamed with the light of hundreds of floating lanterns, their glow reflecting off the polished floors and the intricately carved walls. Alien dignitaries from distant star systems filled the room, each displaying status, wealth, and influence through elaborate garments and jewels that shimmered unnaturally under the lantern light. The air was thick with the perfume of exotic flowers and the murmur of many voices, each alien language weaving a strange and beautiful symphony. Among them, Queen Valera moved with effortless grace, her blue eyes scanning constantly, noting every subtle movement, every glance, every gesture. Beside her, the human guard remained unseen by most. He stayed in the shadows, blending into the darker corners of the hall, observing. His posture was relaxed but alert, every sense focused on potential threats. He had studied the palace, the guests, and even the servants in preparation for this night. It was the night of the evening feast, the event the human had warned Valera about, the moment when her husband's plan might finally be set into motion. Valera kept her smile steady as she greeted guests, each movement measured, every gesture calculated to convey confidence and control. King Thalor moved through the crowd with charm, his smile wide, his gestures elegant. To the untrained eye, he appeared the perfect ruler, the ideal host. But Valera had learned to see what others could not. The human had trained her to notice the details, the small hand tremor as he offered a toast, the slight hesitation in his voice when speaking to certain advisors, the direction of his gaze when it lingered on a hidden corner. The human whispered into her ear, calm but urgent. He is waiting for a moment when vigilance drops. That is when he will act. Watch for the signal. It could be a gesture, a word, or even a pause in movement. Be ready to respond instantly. Valera's heart beat faster, but her face remained calm, serene, regal. I am ready, she replied quietly. We must protect the guests as well. Any chaos could lead to more danger than just me. They moved through the hall, the queen weaving among the dignitaries, and the human staying just out of sight, watching. A waiter passed, carrying trays of alien delicacies, and Valera noticed the subtle tension in his shoulders. It was not fear for the food, she realized, but fear for her. The human followed her gaze. That one has been instructed to assist. The attempt, he whispered. Not all conspirators are obvious. Valera's hand brushed lightly against the human's arm, a subtle signal. Together, they acted, redirecting the waiter with casual gestures and conversation. The plan faltered before it could reach fruition, though neither the waiter nor any guests understood why their movements had been interrupted. Minutes stretched like hours. Every moment felt precarious. Valera noticed her husband whispering to a trusted advisor and then subtly nodding toward a hallway that led to the rear of the hall. The human whispered, "That is the first sign. Be ready." She smiled politely at another guest, then moved closer to a pillar where she could observe without drawing attention. The human adjusted his position beside her, watching, calculating. Suddenly, a subtle shimmer in the corner of the hall drew Valera's attention. A small device, almost invisible to the untrained eye, had been placed among the decorations, an energy disruptor designed to incapacitate her within seconds. She recognized it instantly, the human's earlier lessons guiding her. With a small, almost imperceptible hand gesture, she shifted her position. The device misfired slightly, sending sparks harmlessly across the floor. Panic flickered for a moment in the eyes of those nearby, but the queen remained calm, her movements graceful, masking the danger. The human noted every detail, his mind already forming the next step in their defense. Her husband's eyes flickered briefly toward her, a flash of something that might have been concern or calculation. Valeera did not look away. She maintained her composure, her smile unwavering, her voice light and steady as she greeted another guest. "Your Majesty," the human whispered again. "They are coordinating now. More devices, more guards aligned. With them. This is not a single attack, it is a coordinated attempt meant to create confusion." Valeera's mind raced. She had to act, but subtly, without revealing that she knew. Every decision mattered. A single misstep could lead to her death and chaos in the hall. She moved strategically, guiding conversations, redirecting attention, subtly shifting the flow of people so that the conspirators could not act unnoticed. Her husband approached, smiling, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "Enjoying the evening, my queen?" he asked, his tone smooth, calculated. Valeera's smile did not falter. "Indeed, my king. The guests are most engaging." Her gaze swept briefly to the human in the shadows. They were ready. He nodded imperceptibly, and she understood. The next moment would be crucial. A sudden movement near the side of the hall drew Valeera's attention. A guard, one she had once trusted, adjusted his uniform in a manner that hid a small weapon. The human immediately recognized it and whispered, "Now, intercept." With fluid precision, Valeera stepped closer to the guard, engaging him in casual conversation. The human moved silently behind, ready to act if needed. The guard's weapon remained hidden, but his hands twitched slightly, betraying his intent. Valeera's calm demeanor and subtle manipulation of the surrounding guests caused the guard to falter, lose focus, and step back into the shadows. The threat had been neutralized without alarming the crowd. Her husband's eyes narrowed slightly, but he did not act immediately. It was clear he was testing her, waiting for an opening, a mistake. Valeera understood. He believed that her survival depended solely on her position as queen, not on intellect or observation. He had underestimated the human by her side, the combination of instincts, strategy, and courage that made them a formidable team. Minutes passed in tense silence, the human's eyes scanning constantly, Valeera's mind calculating every possible move. She realized that this feast was more than a social event. It was a battlefield of intellect and strategy. Survival depended on perception, timing, and action. Then, a subtle gesture from her husband, a glance toward a cluster of servants carrying trays, signaled the next stage of his plan. The human leaned close. "They are attempting to distract you while someone else moves closer with another device. You must act." Valeera nodded, keeping her expression calm. She moved smoothly, shifting her position so that the device remained out of reach while subtly guiding the guest to create natural obstructions. The conspirator behind the device stumbled, nearly exposing the plan. Her husband's lips twitched, in a controlled smile, but his eyes betrayed impatience. He could not understand how the queen anticipated each move, how she and the human moved as one, countering every action before it could take effect. The human whispered, "They are improvising now. This is not what they expected. Maintain your calm. We control the situation." Valeera adjusted her posture, engaging her husband in polite conversation, her words light and measured. At the same time, she observed every corner, every movement, every subtle shift. The human mirrored her attention, silently intercepting potential threats. Together, they created an invisible shield of observation and strategy, thwarting every attempt without a single guest realizing the danger that had passed so close. Hours seemed to pass in moments. The feast continued, the guests unaware of the silent battle unfolding among them. Valera and the human worked in perfect coordination, reading patterns, predicting actions, and neutralizing threats before they could strike. It was a delicate dance, each move precise, each observation critical. Finally, the human whispered, "The immediate threat has passed. They will regroup, but we have survived tonight. The king will attempt again, but now he knows we are prepared." Valera allowed herself a brief sigh of relief. She had survived the night, but the danger was far from over. Her husband's betrayal, the web of conspirators, and the subtle threats that lurked in every corner of the palace remained. Yet she also realized the power of partnership, the unexpected strength that came from human insight, courage, and adaptability. As the guests began to depart, Valera and the human retreated to a quiet corridor. The queen's face was calm, but her mind raced. "This is only the beginning," she said quietly. "He will not stop, and neither will the others. We must remain vigilant." The human nodded. "We will. But tonight we have learned something important. We have demonstrated that careful observation, strategy, and action can prevent disaster. And that is something they did not anticipate." Valera looked at him, her eyes reflecting respect and gratitude. "Your people, humans, you have a way of seeing things differently. You notice patterns, connections, and details that others miss. That has saved my life tonight." He inclined his head slightly. "It is what we do, Your Majesty, and it is why I am here." Night descended fully on the palace, and the lantern's glow softened. Valera and the human continued their watch, knowing that threats remained, that conspiracies would evolve, and that the coming days would test them further. But for the first time, the queen felt a renewed sense of control. She was not alone. She had an ally, a mind capable of seeing beyond tradition, beyond appearances, and beyond the assumptions of her world. The palace, once a place of routine and predictable power, had become a chessboard of danger and strategy. And on this board, the queen and the human guard had begun to. The palace had settled into a tense calm after the evening feast. Guests had returned to their quarters, and the main halls echoed only with the soft footsteps of servants and guards. Queen Valera remained in her hidden observation chamber, her eyes sweeping over the palace layout, noting each corridor, each vent, each room where danger might hide. The human guard stood silently beside her, scanning the halls, analyzing patterns of movement, and calculating probabilities of further attacks. The night was far from over, and the queen knew it. "We cannot assume the threat has passed," she said quietly. "Tonight we survived, but they will not wait long to strike again. We must act before they have another chance." The human nodded. "Agreed, but action must be precise. The conspirators will not expect us to move against them yet. We must gather evidence, identify allies, and plan a way to confront them without creating chaos in the palace." Valera's mind raced. She had spent decades ruling this world, but she had never faced a threat so hidden, so deep. The palace, which had once seemed safe, now felt like a labyrinth of danger. Every person could be an enemy. Every action could be a trap. Yet, in the presence of the human, she felt a measure of hope. His perspective, his logic, and his courage provided clarity she had never experienced before. "First, we need to confirm the scope of the conspiracy," she said. "We must know who is involved before making any moves. One mistake, and it could cost lives." The human produced a small portable device from his belt, a tool that allowed him to access hidden security feeds, monitor movement through vents, and detect anomalies in the palace's energy systems. "This will help," he said. "We can watch without being seen, track patterns, and gather evidence. We must be methodical." For hours they worked in silence, the queen observing, the human monitoring, both of them mapping the hidden movements of the palace. They discovered subtle signals, guards moving slightly out of formation, servants whispering near restricted areas, advisors lingering near rooms they had no reason to enter. Each detail was a thread, and they began to weave a picture of the conspiracy. "They have aligned themselves carefully," the human said, his voice low and steady. Not all are aware of the full plan, but each plays a part. Your husband is coordinating them, but some are acting independently, driven by ambition or fear. This is bigger than one attack. It is an attempt to seize control of the palace itself. Valera's blue eyes narrowed. Then we cannot act alone. We must find someone we can trust within the palace, someone whose loyalty is unquestionable. The human considered this. There may be a few. Observation will reveal them. Look for consistency in behavior, adherence to duty, and small signs of loyalty, even under pressure. Those who act with integrity are often invisible until tested. Valera nodded. She began to recall her own observations, subtle hints she had ignored before, the hesitation of a junior guard in following an order, the discreet gestures of a servant who seemed more aware than others. Together, she and the human identified 3 individuals whose loyalty appeared genuine. We will recruit them carefully, she said. They will act as eyes and ears. They must not know the full plan, only what is necessary for survival. The human agreed. We must also prepare contingencies. If the conspirators sense our actions, they may strike quickly. We need escape routes, secure rooms, and diversions ready. Valera spent the next few hours coordinating the palace layout, identifying rooms that could be secured, corridors that could be blocked, and paths that allowed them to move unseen. The human assisted, noting weaknesses in the palace's defenses that she had overlooked. Together they transformed the palace from a place of vulnerability into a controlled environment where they could respond to threats with precision. As dawn approached, they were ready. Valera called the 3 loyal individuals to a discreet chamber, speaking to them in measured tones. She revealed only what was necessary, instructing them on observation, subtle communication, and reporting unusual behavior. The human stood nearby, guiding them through the logic of threats and the importance of timing. You must act only when instructed, Valera said. Any misstep could expose you and put your lives in danger. Trust each other, and trust the plan. Above all, trust your judgment. The 3 nodded, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. They had been loyal servants and guards for years, but now they faced a challenge unlike any before. With guidance from the Queen and the human, they would become instruments of insight, helping to uncover the hidden network of betrayal. Hours passed, and the palace seemed to breathe in quiet anticipation. Then a subtle signal appeared, a movement in the shadows, a whispered conversation between 2 advisors who had been carefully monitored. The human leaned close to Valera. They are testing their next move. It is subtle, but deliberate. The king will attempt another action today, perhaps during the council meeting. We must be prepared. Valera's eyes gleamed with determination. Then we will be ready. We will not wait to be struck. We will expose them first. The council chamber was filled with tension when they arrived. Advisors and officials gathered, their expressions polite but strained, each aware of the delicate balance of power. Valera entered with her usual grace, her calm demeanor masking the storm of strategy in her mind. The human remained nearby, unseen by most, observing and calculating. As the meeting began, subtle signs emerged. One advisor shifted uncomfortably, another whispered too closely to the king, a guard lingered near a door with unusual insistence. Valera noted each detail, signaling to the human with slight gestures that only he would understand. Together they mapped the actions, tracking the conspirators with precision. Then a small device hidden under the table activated, sending a pulse of energy intended to disable Valera. The human acted instantly, stepping into the shadows, intercepting the device with a small shield and redirecting the energy harmlessly into the floor. The room remained calm, unaware of the near disaster. Valera's eyes met her husband's briefly. He froze, realizing that the attempt had failed. His smile was controlled, but the eyes betrayed frustration. He had underestimated the Queen's ability to observe and act, the human's capacity for foresight, and the loyalty of those she had quietly enlisted. The Queen leaned slightly toward the human, whispering, "We have their attention now. They know we are aware. He nodded. And they will adjust. Expect another attempt soon. We must continue to gather evidence and prepare to act decisively. Valera allowed the council meeting to continue, engaging in discussion, questioning advisors, and subtly redirecting attention. She spoke with authority, her words measured, her tone commanding respect. Meanwhile, the human monitored movement, ready to intervene at a moment's notice. After the council concluded, they returned to the observation chamber. The queen exhaled, her mind still racing. This conspiracy is deeper than I imagined. My husband has allies in unexpected places. We must strike carefully, but decisively. The human laid out a plan. We will expose them one by one, gather evidence, document movements, and confront them in controlled circumstances. When the king and his main allies are identified, we can act publicly. The key is timing and precision. Valera considered this. We will need to lure them into revealing themselves, perhaps a staged event, a situation that forces them to act, something subtle, yet undeniable. The human nodded. Exactly. We must manipulate the environment to reveal intentions. Once the conspirators act, we will have proof. Until then, observation and patience are our weapons. Hours turned into a full day of careful planning and observation. Valera and the human worked tirelessly, coordinating with the loyal individuals, adjusting palace layouts, and monitoring the conspirators. Each action was deliberate, each movement calculated. The palace, once a place of vulnerability, became a controlled environment where the queen and her human ally held the advantage. Finally, they had enough information. The patterns of behavior, the subtle signals, and the hidden movements of the king and his conspirators painted a clear picture. Valera and the human could identify each individual involved, understand their role, and predict their next moves. Valera looked at the human, determination in her eyes. It is time. We expose them. We end this before they can act again. We have the advantage, and we will not let it slip. He nodded, eyes sharp. Agreed. But remember, Your Majesty, precision is everything. One mistake could undo all we have prepared. We must act with care, using evidence, observation, and authority. Valera's lips pressed together. Then we act tomorrow. We confront them in a controlled setting. The palace will see the truth, and those who betray will be revealed. The night was silent, but tension lingered. Valera and the human guard prepared for the coming confrontation, knowing the stakes were higher than ever. Allies had been identified, conspirators mapped, and evidence collected. The next move would determine the queen's survival, the palace's stability, and the fate of those who had sought to seize power through treachery. As dawn approached, Valera stood by a window watching the palace grounds bathed in pale light. She had faced danger before, but never with such uncertainty, never with betrayal so close. Yet, in the human beside her, she saw courage, logic, and ingenuity. Together, they would confront the conspiracy, and she knew they could prevail. The Palais. The sun rose over the palace, casting long golden beams across the polished floors and intricate towers. The morning was calm, yet beneath the serene surface, tension crackled like electricity. Queen Valera moved through her private corridors, with purpose, her blue eyes sharp and alert. Every step was calculated, every glance measured. Today would decide the fate of the palace, her life, and the loyalty of those who had long served her. The human guard walked silently beside her, a quiet presence of focus and resolve. The conspirators do not yet know the full extent of what we discovered, he said softly. They suspect we are aware, but they do not yet know we can predict their moves. Timing is everything. Valera nodded. She had spent the past night reviewing the evidence, rehearsing strategies, and coordinating with the 3 loyal allies within the palace. Each step had been planned with precision. Today the conspiracy would be exposed, and the palace would witness the strength of intellect and courage over treachery. The first stage of the plan took them to the council chamber. The room had been prepared subtly, an arrangement of seating that allowed observation and control, unobstructed lines of sight and carefully placed security measures hidden from view. Valera's heart beat steadily, not from fear, but from the intensity of anticipation. She had ruled her kingdom for decades, yet this challenge surpassed all others. "Your Majesty," the human whispered, "all is in place. The loyal ones are ready, and the conspirators will soon reveal themselves. The moment is yours." Valera's lips pressed together. "Then we proceed." The council chamber filled quickly, advisors and officials filing in, unaware that today's meeting was anything but ordinary. King Thalor entered last, his usual composed smile on his face. Yet beneath the surface, subtle tension rippled through him. He had sensed her awareness, and it had unnerved him. Valera greeted him politely. "Good morning, my king. I trust the night was restful?" Thalor's smile remained smooth, though his eyes flickered with something darker. "Indeed, my queen, I trust you are well?" "Very well," she replied. Her gaze shifted briefly to the human in the shadows, who nodded imperceptibly. The stage was set. The first challenge came swiftly. A minor advisor, one of the king's close allies, attempted to initiate a hidden signal, meant to alert another conspirator to act. Valera had anticipated it. She raised a hand slightly, directing attention subtly toward a discussion point, causing the conspirator to falter. The human intercepted the signal device, disabling it quietly. The advisor's plan was revealed to no one but them. The king's eyes narrowed imperceptibly. He realized that the queen had predicted every move. His lips pressed into a thin line, but he said nothing, waiting for the next opportunity. Valera allowed the meeting to proceed, maintaining a calm, authoritative demeanor. She asked questions that forced the conspirators to reveal inconsistencies in their statements. The human monitored reactions, noting micro-expressions, subtle shifts, in body language and unintentional signals that betrayed guilt. Minutes turned into hours and tension mounted. Valera's loyal allies subtly intervened, guiding conversations, redirecting attention, and ensuring that every conspirator's movement was observed and documented. It was a careful dance of control, strategy, and insight, all guided by the Queen and the human guard. Then came the critical moment. King Thalor attempted to move against her, signaling a guard to approach her with a concealed energy blade. The human reacted instantly, stepping from the shadows to intercept the attack. The guard was neutralized without alerting the others, and the Queen used the moment to command authority. "Enough!" Valera's voice rang clear through the chamber, authoritative and unwavering. "I am aware of the treachery that has infiltrated this council. Those who have plotted against the crown and the kingdom will be held accountable." Gasps spread through the room. Some advisors froze, realizing that the Queen knew their secrets. Others glanced nervously at each other, seeking reassurance or perhaps blame. King Thalor's expression hardened. He understood that his plan had failed and that the Queen, aided by the human guard, had outmaneuvered him at every turn. Valera's gaze swept across the chamber. "The evidence is clear. Devices planted to harm me, signals to alert conspirators, and subtle manipulations of loyal staff, all intended to seize control. Your intentions are exposed." The human stepped closer to her, silently ready to protect and act if needed. The conspirators looked at him briefly, confused by the calm authority he radiated. They had underestimated him and, through him, the Queen. Thalor attempted to speak to regain control, but Valera anticipated his words. "No explanations will excuse betrayal. Actions have consequences, and the palace is under my protection. Those who threaten it will face justice." A tense silence filled the room. Then, the loyal guards, previously positioned discreetly by the Queen and the human, moved into place surrounding the conspirators. The energy devices and hidden weapons were confiscated with precise efficiency. The conspirators realized that resistance was futile. The human whispered to Valera, "They are contained. The palace is secure, and the threat neutralized. But we must act decisively to prevent any further attempts." Valera nodded. She stepped forward, her presence commanding respect and authority. By royal decree, these individuals will face trial for their betrayal. Loyalty to the crown and the kingdom is not optional. Justice will be served. The conspirators were taken into custody, each expression ranging from fear to defiance. The chamber, once tense and threatening, was now under the Queen's control. Her authority was undeniable, and the human's presence had been crucial in maintaining that control and ensuring that no harm came to her during the confrontation. After the council chamber was secured, Valera and the human retreated to a chamber. The Queen allowed herself a moment of relief, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "We did it," she said quietly. "The palace is safe, and the conspiracy is exposed." The human shook his head slightly. "This is only the first step. Others may have been inspired by Thalor's ambitions. We must remain vigilant. But today, we have proven that careful observation, strategy, and courage can protect even the most dangerous place." Valera's eyes reflected gratitude and admiration. "Without you, none of this would have been possible. Your insight, your courage, and your ability to see what others cannot. It has saved lives, including mine." He inclined his head. "It is my duty, Your Majesty, and it is why I am here." The Queen allowed herself a small smile. She had faced betrayal, danger, and hidden threats within the walls she once thought secure. Yet through careful planning, observation, and partnership with a human ally, she had overcome the danger and reclaimed control of her palace. As the sun rose higher, casting warm light across the towers and corridors, Valera addressed her loyal allies. "Today we have faced treachery and survived. Today we have seen the strength of intelligence, courage, and loyalty. But tomorrow, we must continue to protect the kingdom. Vigilance is not optional. The palace is ours to safeguard, and together we will ensure it remains secure." The human stood quietly beside her, observing the palace with sharp eyes. "The threat may have been neutralized for now, but the lessons remain. Trust, observation, and adaptability are the keys to survival. And today we have proven their power." Valera looked out over the palace grounds, the sunlight illuminating the intricate towers and gardens. She felt a renewed sense of strength and purpose. The Queen, who had once ruled through tradition and authority alone, had discovered a new kind of power, the power of insight, strategy, and partnership. Her husband, once a threat, now faced the consequences of his betrayal. The conspirators, exposed and contained, would learn that treachery could not succeed against careful planning and courage. And Valera, standing tall and resolute, knew that the palace, her kingdom, and her people were safe because she had embraced a strength she had never fully understood before, the strength of collaboration with a species she had underestimated. The human guard, whose presence had been crucial in navigating deception, observing threats, and anticipating moves, remained at her side. Together, they had faced danger, outwitted treachery, and emerged victorious. Valera knew that their alliance had changed the future of the palace and perhaps even the kingdom itself. As the morning continued, the Queen moved through the halls, addressing staff and guards, ensuring that order was restored and trust reinforced. The human followed, ever vigilant, ever ready to act. Their partnership, forged in danger, had proven unbreakable, and the palace had witnessed the extraordinary power of courage, intelligence, and loyalty. By midday, the palace was calm once more. The conspirators were under secure watch. The king had been removed from direct influence, and the loyal allies had proven their dedication. Valera allowed herself a moment to reflect on the events of the past day. She had faced betrayal, danger, and near death, yet she had survived and reclaimed control. The palace, once a place of hidden threats, had become a testament to her authority, strategy, and the unexpected power of human insight. In the quiet of her private chambers, Valera turned to the human guard. "Today, you saved not only my life, but the stability of the palace. I owe you more than words can express." He smiled faintly. "It is enough to know that the kingdom is safe, Your Majesty. That is reward on